We're live. Thank you. Welcome back to Senate Education, Tuesday, April 5th, 2:39. Ms. Longchamp, Mr. Robinson, great to have both of you with us.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
You're more than welcome. We really appreciate making the time. So we have talked on again, off again during the session around what we know is a crisis that we're facing right now in our schools with shortages of principals, teachers, other school personnel. And we know it's only going to get worse, even by at the end of this year. We're already hearing of longtime professionals that are deciding to move on, and for a range of different reasons, all understandable. This might be the right time, certainly after COVID. We know what a challenge career in education can be, and understand when those are ready for the next step. We certainly respect that and appreciate what they've given. All that being said, we think this is going to continue to get worse before it gets better, and we're looking for some creative ideas, not only immediately, but I'd say even long-term, to deal with this shortage. And I think you've heard this committee talk in the past about how do we get the state of Vermont to be the best place to have a teaching career, best place to be a principal, best place to work with kids. And I recognize it's a complicated question. It has to do with housing, it has to do with costs, it has all sorts of implications when you're thinking about that kind of a policy. So I met with the chair of Senate Economic Development this afternoon. He is not feeling confident that the bill coming out of there on workforce has a clear path. So we are likely to do some work in one of our miscellaneous education bills, likely the one that the House has in this committee now. So with that, I know the two of you have been working hard on this issue. We'll turn it over to the two of you for some ideas.
Great.
Thanks, yeah. Senator Campion, and thanks to the committee for digging into this work. As a general matter, I was just down in visiting with your colleagues in Senate Government Operations around the other side of this conversation, which is how do we get some retired educators to come back to the classroom to address these acute needs. So appreciate the Senate's dual focus and multi-pronged focus on this issue. I'm going to hand it over in just 1 minute to my colleague, Julie, who is the creator of the idea in this specific proposal. I will say that what we're going to be sharing with you today is to help address the acute need here and now for literally next year, but it does have opportunities to be built out over the coming years. Obviously, we've talked about other proposals around student loan forgiveness, retention bonuses with ed fund surplus, and notions like this. But what's exciting about this is that it's scalable now. It can have a real and direct impact in making sure that we have high quality teachers providing high quality instruction to students when they need it, where they need it, in districts that they need it. So the proposal that Juliet's going to walk through is titled Grow Your Ed Vermont, or Grow VT Ed. Sorry, Julie, I was tripping around. And it's sort of modeled off of a Grow Your Own model, which is being used and explored in places across the country. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Julie. Go for it, Julie.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Juliet Longchamp. I'm the Director of Professional Programs at Vermont NEA. And for Senators Lyons and Chittenden, I worked 25 of my 30 years in the classroom were at Williston Central School. So I am a career teacher. I never wanted to go into administration. I loved being in the classroom. So I'm a national board certified teacher, and I'm certified in elementary, special ed, and middle school in all 4 content areas. So I have a broad range of expertise in education. Over the past decade, I've been formally and informally supporting prospective teachers earn initial licensure through the peer review program. and currently serve, and actually served like in the early 90s with Wendy Anderson and the Peer Review Advisory Committee. But for the past 5 years, I would say my work in supporting Vermont teachers in peer review has expanded dramatically. And I started offering a class through Castleton, helping prospective teachers. So these were mostly teachers that were in the classroom on a provisional license, wanting to go through peer review, but needed support. The job is overwhelming being in the classroom, and then having to do this independently was just a little bit too much for them to handle. So this course has grown over the past 5 years, and it was from this course that we kind of have based the Grow Vermont Ed. This winter, 7 of the Northeast Kingdom curriculum directors reached out to me to see if we could develop a Grow Your Own peer review program to support the teachers that they are going to need to hire on a provisional license during the 22-23 school year. I already have 31 people that have applied. So I already have this program going, but it's scaled to the Northeast Kingdom. The curriculum directors especially wanted to recruit community members who work in the school as support staff, substitute teachers, and other positions. And then they're also the Great Resignation. They have people that have, left their jobs and are seeking to become teachers. Nationally, 80% of support staff live in the communities where they work. And the hope for these Northeast Kingdom curriculum directors is that through a supported program, these prospective teachers will continue to teach, learn, and grow in the district, contributing to a more sustainable and effective teaching workforce. And that, just North Country alone, I think they had 45 new teachers, and finding 45 mentors for those first year teachers this year was really difficult.
That was 45 new teachers at the start of this academic year.
Yes.
Okay,
yes. I support their work with mentoring and coaching, and their mentor coordinators said it was like 45 new educators. So knowing the need for this type of program statewide, I was asked to propose this program on a larger scale, which is why I'm here today. So to equip new educators with content.
Ms. Longstreet,
Thank you.
Ms. or Senator Hooker has a question.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Longship. So can you tell me again where these 45 prospective teachers were?
So
And were they all placed?
Sure. So now I was not working with all of these 45, but just to know the scale of new staff. North Country, I believe, and you can check with Jessica Applegate, who is their curriculum director. They have it's a huge district. I think there are 13 schools in that district. And I think they had 45 new educators, many of whom were on provisional licenses.
Okay, so they were on provisional licenses. They needed some help in getting completing what they needed to in order to get a standard license.
Correct. So a provisional license is good for 2 years, which means they have 2 years to finish if they're going through the peer review program, they have 2 years. I am working probably with 5 of them right now, and probably 30 people currently statewide in the class that I offer through Castleton.
Okay.
In the class,
Please.
the class through Castleton helps them just organize their documentation to go through the peer review.
Right.
It's just like you call it a class, but they're not learning new things about teaching.
Are we charging them for that class? Does Castleton charge?
It is an option. So I let people audit it. I would say there are a few that are taking it for credit, and the rest are just auditing it, their members, and they're being supported through Vermont NEA.
Senator Hooker.
And is there a time limit on this, or is this,
So when I run the class, when I run the class, we're looking at a full year. But I will say what we're proposing here is is more than support on creating the portfolio. It's kind of on steroids because we are actually going to be instructing. So the goal of this program is to equip new educators with stronger content and skills that will allow them to apply this new knowledge and integrate it kind of in real time. So in a way, we're flying the plane while we're building it. But we all know that teacher quality matters. Effective educators have an immense influence on the lives of children, and conversely, somebody that is not prepared may have lasting negative effects. I read one study that a highly effective teacher can grow student knowledge 4 times the amount of somebody who is inexperienced. So I think our goal is to create teachers in a very accelerated way with the skills that will enable them to be as profession ready on the first day they have students in the classroom, and then support them through the year in building the content and the competencies that are necessary and we expect all first-year teachers to have.
If I may, now I'm just going to pass this under personally, but can you give us an example? So what I like about this is it's very much like you're already self-identifying. If you're working in a school, chances are, you want to, in this economy right now, you want to be there. You like kids, it's, you appreciate education. So if you're an admin assistant in the principal's office, let's say you have a couple years education and of higher education, and you really want to be in the classroom. Are those the kinds of folks, or you're in the cafeteria? Is that the kind of group, and I'm hoping the answer is yes, that you're going to be tapping into to get them excited about being in the classroom?
So yes and no.
Okay.
To be a teacher, you need to have a 4-year bachelor.
No, I understand. So I'm wondering if, because a lot of, there are a lot of Vermonters who go for a couple of years, go for 3 years, go for a year, so and there are different circumstances. It's not of lack of interest. Sometimes it's financial that, their dream is to be a teacher, but they just, for whatever reason, can't finish it. So please go ahead.
So I actually do have a teacher a paraeducator in a Vermont school, and I believe it's one of these 7 districts. I've been meeting with these prospective teachers over the past month. I probably have 3 a day because I want to know their background. So this person went to community college, and then she needed to work. She had to pay bills, and she spent the next 4 years going through NVU online and got her professional studies degree with an emphasis on education. But because student teaching, the traditional student teaching is 13 weeks or the equivalent, she is now being hired next year and will hopefully receive a provisional license and then be in this program. So she didn't have a traditional college career where she went for 4 years.
Right.
She, I think she, got married, had a family, did 2 years, and then, slowly finished her bachelor's degree. But I also see this as people who didn't know when they were 18 to 21 years old that education was really what their passion was. So it will enable them through, looking at the transcript. So I was in a guest lecturing in a St. Michael's class last night, and there were there were some graduate students and some undergraduate students. And the 2 graduate students, I was like, one is a paraeducator and he's working on his MAT, and the other one is also she substitute teaches, and she's a part-time MAT program at St. Mike's. And I looked at both of them. I'm like, you probably should be applying for jobs next year because they would be perfect. Continue with their education. They wouldn't do this program, but
I'm sorry to interrupt, and then I will pass to Senator Persick and Senator Hooker. But so if it's not, so who are you really looking for then? If it's not going to be some of these folks that are already there that might have 3 years of college, who in the schools are you really looking for?
So we are looking for paraeducators,
Okay.
people that are in the schools or in the communities that have 4-year degrees and a passion for children and teaching.
Senator Pursley.
Can you give us a quick description of the provisional license? Like who determines that, or is that kind of a rubber stamp? Oh, you have a 4-year degree, the school wants to hire you, provisional license, or is it difficult to get?
No, I think that's a great, so superintendents have to be the ones to ask the Agency of Education for a provisional license. And that is they will look at transcripts. Before people get into the peer review program, they need to pass the Praxis 1, the Praxis Core, or have the SAT, ACT equivalent, and the Praxis 2. So that will help. That helps to strengthen their application to perhaps get that provisional license. There's also a 1-year emergency license, and I just got an email from someone in the Northeast Kingdom, forget which school, but she's been hired and she has been granted an emergency license, which is only good for 1 year. So if maybe this would be a great question for the Agency of Education, because they're the ones that actually do this. But if the candidate, they have their 4-year degree, maybe they don't have a lot of experience or some of these other pieces, they may be granted a 1-year emergency license, which is another type of license. And then within that time, one would think that they would need to pass the Praxis and begin building their experience.
And you would take those people into your program as well?
Right.
And then do you also help those paraeducators to say, hey, you could become a teacher, but you would need first to get your provisional license. We'll help you get your provisional license, and then we'll help you to get your permanent license.
What I've been telling our paraeducator members that we have is that if you are, if you have experience and you see jobs in your community, I'm encouraging them to apply, because there may not be enough certified staff to actually take those positions, and districts will hire them, especially if they're known. If they've been in the school for, 5 or 10 years, they are a known educator in that school.
They can only hire them if they get the provisional license.
Right. There are a lot of provisional licenses right now. I think hundreds.
So I think that my question has something to do with this. With regard to those paraeducators, say, who have a degree, maybe. I have a daughter who's a permanent sub with a degree in public administration.
Mm-hmm.
What would she be able to do in your program if she decided she wanted to become a teacher?
The way the peer review works, all students in either undergraduate or a master's of arts and teaching, they have to complete the Vermont licensure portfolio, which looks at the 10 core teaching standards, and they have to show multiple pieces of evidence. What we're proposing for Grow Vermont Ed is that we will actually have seminars. So we are going to have classes that will address those competencies, those Vermont core teaching standards. The other thing that these people will have to do that people do not have to do in licensure programs is they have to document their competencies in that content area. Where if I was, my son graduated from UVM last year with an MAT for secondary English. The program, it was designed to meet the competencies in his content area. When we have these alt-root teachers, they don't have that. So they actually have to document the competencies. One of the things that we're proposing is that we will have content leads, which will support candidates within the content area. So a special educator, like right now, from the 31 that I had this morning in the Northeast Kingdom, about a third were special educators and a third were elementary educators. So we would have a content area lead a special educator and a content area lead elementary educator. And throughout the year, they would be engaging in seminars that would lead to meeting those competencies and documenting the competencies for their content area. And I'm not going through my testimony. You've read that, so I appreciate
No, this is helpful, Senator Purcell.
2 questions. Did have written testimony that describes the program?
I do, yes.
I didn't see that.
Just a general outline.
I assume that's on your somewhere, but real quickly, is there a situation in the last whatever years where people get to the end of their 2 years of their provisional license and then they lose that, or do they get extension for another 2 years? I mean, what happens before your program if your existing program wasn't there?
I'll tell you why I started the program.
Yeah.
So my first couple of years at Vermont NEA, I would get calls from teachers who were put on provisional, that were hired on a provisional license. And come March that second year, they would call me because they wanted support because they hadn't started it. And that's when we started supporting people through the peer review process.
Well, what happens if they get to the end of the 2 years and they didn't do the documentation?
Well, there are, they will give, the Agency of Education has given extensions in some circumstances, but there were people that lost their job.
The school had to go find either another provisional licensed teacher or a licensed teacher. Okay.
Exactly.
Even during the pandemic.
Dr. Longshot, I'm wondering if, I'm sorry, my question just escaped me. I remember hearing that when New York City was in the middle of a real teacher shortage, when they opened it up to really the people of the city of New York and said, hey, who's interested in teaching? The applications were literally overwhelming into the different agencies of education down there. So I would anticipate the same. I would anticipate, which is exciting, that there's a real possibility of getting a range of different people into the classroom. So my question is, how will this be shared? How will you get the word out to, a retired attorney, legislator, physician, lab technician, that this is a real possibility that now at this point in your career, it's either we're going to help you switch, or if you're retired, whatever your circumstances, you might want to enter teaching. How are you going to let people know about this?
Well, for the Northeast Kingdom group, it is I'm working right with the curriculum directors. They are the ones that are spreading the word. We certainly, if we decide to take this to scale and offer it for the whole state, there are lots of different ways. We've started a website. We've done webinars. So we did do webinars for the Northeast Kingdom folks, for those that were interested, that the curriculum directors got the word out in their own communities. And I would work with our partners to develop a plan for getting the word out.
Yeah, and I think whatever we do in this committee, I think having some dollars there to get the word out, I think it would be incredibly exciting to most Vermonters who would like to be in the classroom to have this real opportunity. My final question, and I mentioned this to Mr. Robinson in the hallway last week, it seems as though a lot of professions don't always say, hey, can we see your transcripts? Do we do that with teachers? And in some ways, I'm mixed on that. I'll be honest. You could be a B- student and be a rock star in the classroom. But showing that you didn't do great in X, Y, and Z, might be intimidating. We all know you could be an A+ student and not necessarily be great in that. So I see you shaking your head that transcripts are required. I work at Bennington College. I don't think we've ever had a faculty member submit their you know, their transcripts. I know if you run for Senate in Washington County, you have to, but other than that, I think in the legislature, you don't. So it's just something that kind of, I feel mixed about it. I really do. But
I think that what is unique about the Agency of Education peer review program is that there is a little bit of flexibility. Because you're right. An 18-year-old male in his first year of college may have other things in mind than the academics, and maybe they didn't do so well on their first semester away from home. And that will lower that GPA for quite a long time. So I totally get that. There is a little more
I'm not
flexibility.
talking from personal experience. It has nothing to do with me trying to be a teacher and change this law, but go ahead.
I will say, my son listens to this testimony, he'll probably kill me. But, you know, he wasn't quite a 3.0, but in his English credits, he did have that 3.0. So even UVM was a little flexible when they accepted him into the program.
We'll have him in to testify tomorrow.
I think that is one of the beauties about the peer review program, is that it does provide a little flexibility, and you know, and we've seen it work.
Sure.
One of the things about the program that is absolutely critical is that these new educators are well supported. And I think this is what makes Grow Vermont Ed a little bit different, is that we've built in 4 levels of support. First, there's the school-based mentor, and this trained mentor will, you know, they'll have weekly meetings, and the focus will be their growing practice, content, pedagogy, classroom management and environment, lesson planning, as well as acclimating to the culture of the school. Then within each district, and I know that I think 20 of the 31 are from North Country that I have signed up already. There'll be one district lead per 10 teachers. And that the purpose of the district lead is to really help with that Vermont licensure portfolio. There will be seminars, and the district teacher leads will be attending the seminars and supporting me in these seminars. But their focus on those new teachers will be to help them work through that portfolio and meet those deadlines. So the goal is that the portfolios will be done by the end of July, and we will have dates throughout the year that's reasonable, given that these people will also be first-year teachers.
Senator Persick has a question.
Yes.
I know I should know this, but the licensure requirement goes all the way down to preschool?
Correct.
Or is it starting?
Correct. Nope. I'm actually working with some preschool people through secondary people right now.
Mr. Robinson, I've been trying to ignore your hand, but it's not disappearing. So I feel I must call on you at this point, just for legal purposes.
I appreciate the acknowledgement, and I defer on all the details to Julie. I just want to say, sort of on the high level, you know, what we're trying to do is we're trying to wrap around structural supports inside an education setting to these provisionally licensed educators, so they can be the best educators they can be for their students, and so they stay in the profession. Because as the question got to, I think it was from Senator Perchlik to Julie earlier, if you're on a provisional license, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a permanent license, you're going to stay in. We want to wrap these folks around with the support from their colleagues, the pedagogical support, and for them to be successful educators for their students and for their careers. And what's interesting about this, because Julie's been working with these Northeast Kingdom curriculum directors, the tracks are already laid, and we're in an opportunity where if there's resources, we can scale this up statewide to a certain level. And then, of course, you know, years from now, it hopefully will continue to grow. So I just wanted to kind of reorient us back to that, recognizing your committee has other testimony to hear today as well.
Right.
No, I appreciate that. And I think one of the things, and then Senator Persick has a question, is what does that dollar amount look like? What is it that you need from us? And perhaps it is, oh, there it is, 722,000. Thank you, we've got it. Senator Persick and then Senator Lyons.
So is there, we're always looking for ways to strengthen our state college. You have this partnership with Castleton, but they're not getting any tuition dollars out of it, but do you feel there's
So they
other
will get,
benefits?
yeah, they will get tuition dollars out of this. This will be a and I talked with Rick Reardon this week about it. It will be a contract class. So they will get, and participants can either take it for 3 or 6 graduate credits. So for those people that are, they have their bachelor's degree, they will end up with possibly 6 credits of graduate work. And
Does that 4,800 per educator include tuition to Castleton, or that tuition to Castleton?
No, so most, I think all teachers, Colin, you might be able to have in their collective bargaining agreement, they have access to up to 3 in some districts. I was in Williston, I had up to 3 credits per year, and that's what they would access. So it wouldn't necessarily come out of their pocket. It would come out of their professional development funds that are part of their collective bargaining agreement. Yep.
Okay, great.
So, and hopefully they will, pursue a master's degree from, one of the state colleges or private colleges that great.
Yeah.
Is that we
So Dr. Longchamp and Mr. Robinson, if this number were doubled, if we doubled the amount, if it were possible to get to 300 teachers, is the program ready to take that on? Only, when Dr. Longchamp started, you mentioned that 48 teachers last year up in that district. It seems as though the need will be there for 300. My question is would the program be ready to stand up and be on its own?
Well, I will say technology, we're all getting really good at engaging via technology, and that makes it a little more scalable because we can have the seminars online. And I was in a meeting with the agency yesterday, and the discussion is, we know we're going to have teachers that are going to be hired at the end of August and September. And we are going to have a jump start, because I think it is critical that any educator in a classroom understands child and adolescent development. They understand learning theory and how to build that culture of learning in their classroom, how to, basic lesson and unit planning. Like, there's some things that they really do need to have, which is sort of our jumpstart program in August before that first in-service day. But we can record it. Right. Which is great. And then I just want to put that I have been offered, we are going to have a full-time fellow next year. So this will be a released teacher from their classroom duties to work full-time at Vermont NEA. And this will be one of her projects. We can't really tell you the name right now, but she is a national board certified special educator. And I felt it really important for a special educator for both, because I know we have a need for special educators, and she's a very good one. But also when we look at Act 173, and I think we have an opportunity to really educate these new teachers on how to really create learning opportunities for all students in the classroom. And the other piece that I think can be very exciting is having an affinity group for our BIPOC educators and support a more diverse workforce. So I think the potential is great. And the other piece is that, I run the National Board Network. So I work with all teachers that are pursuing National Board certification. And, I really want to develop teacher leadership.
Great. Mr. Robinson, that number 300 that I threw out, I don't know if you've been able to figure out the need there, if the NEA has jumped into that at that kind of granular level. Are you batting around numbers, whether or not it would be, next fall, 300, 500, anything like that?
I'll be honest with you. I defer
Yeah.
to Julie as it relates to capacity, because
Okay,
she is the professional
sure.
expert who's going to be working with this fellow who she mentioned to do the delivery of this program. And if she's saying she has capacity to support
No,
300,
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Do you have an idea? Does the NEA have a number of likely vacancies that we would have
Oh,
to fill?
oh, well, we know right now, I mean, if you go into School Spring, which is the
Yeah.
website, that there are 1,000 teaching positions posted today.
Okay,
On
so,
School Spring.
so we really want to have that number higher. Senator Lyons and then Senator Hooker.
Well, I think most of my questions have been answered, but I was going to go to the geographic distribution for folks who complete and receive their provisional. I'm hearing they get a provisional license. And so my first question is, are they paying, will there be a fee for the provisional license to pay for the administrative costs? That's one question. And then you've answered the other one. So you're going to be using teleteaching. So there'll be Zoom sessions, and the mentoring process, will that be one-on-one, or will it also be, in person or Zooming?
yeah.
And then my third question is on that geographic distribution. So are you going to try and sort people into the program who then would work in those parts of the state that might be underserved at this point and have a lower salary going forward? Because that's one of the problems we're hearing about.
So let me start with the first one, the fee. So that would be an agency of education, question about the licensing fee. I think it's like a $50 registration fee, and like a 2-year license would be $100, but I might be wrong with that. And that's not built into that. Historically, kind of licensing is the responsibility of the employee. And as far as geographic location, I mean, I created this program with the Northeast Kingdom curriculum director. So that was the focus. And the only thing that I didn't mention is that I want it to be sustainable, but not to the scale. Like, I know this is a Band-Aid, but the peer review alternative route to certification, has been around for decades. And my hope is some of these district leads, because we will be developing content that they may use in the future, that they would have more district-wide, sustainability by having their own district sort of academies. Like, my goal is I don't want to be in the business of being a licensure program. I want to support the aspiring educators in our existing programs, because I do love the work that they are doing in all of our colleges and universities. And that's my vision of where I want to be. But I know we have this emergency situation right now where we need to get people with a passion for children and for teaching in the classroom, and as skilled as we can make them, so our students can receive a quality education and hopefully support them so they continue to want to be teachers. Yeah,
we're just getting a little short on time. So I just, if you could, any concluding comments, I think and to respond to Senator Lyons, that would be great, only because I'm looking at the clock and our ledge counsel needs to jump in.
Well, I'm happy to answer questions offline, but
Sure.
One of the things that how we want to evaluate this program, because I think that's, we at Vermont NEA and NEA, we like to apply improvement science. So we will be evaluating each seminar. We'll be surveying our candidates, our participants every other month. We'll be surveying curriculum directors and administrators. And we want to know how many are successful achieving level 1 certification through the peer review process. And then how many of the Grow Vermont Ed participants actually return to year 2. So those are some of the data points that we would like to follow and report back.
Thank you. I think we're going to have to leave it there for today. We really appreciate this idea, and we're going to talk a little bit about it, and we'll probably have other people in, and we know how to reach you, and certainly we see Mr. Robinson regularly, and we can touch base with him in case we have additional questions. But this has been really terrific. Thank you so much.
And Senator Campion, if I may, real quickly, we have a more comprehensive document than was provided in the testimony today that digs down into nitty-gritty details, if that would be of use for future conversations.
It'd be great if you would forward it to Daphne, and she can forward it to the committee. And our intention right now is to start to put together some priorities for appropriations. And I'd be surprised if this wasn't at the top of the list.
Great. Thank you for your work. Appreciate having the time today.
Thanks, everybody.
So is everyone in agreement? I mean, I think we try to push that number up. At least say to Jane, hey,
Definitely.
we've got 1,000 shortages, 1,000 openings right now. This is 150. Can we at least try to get to 300?
How do you get people to apply for those jobs? Because it's my understanding that nobody's applying,
Right.
you know.
So with this
This
program,
is- yeah.
hopefully, and also I do think if we do talk about marketing, if there were an ad in the Banner that said, or the Rutland Herald, we're looking for
Yeah,
teachers,
we
we're
need
trying
to
to
do,
move in
yeah.
this direction,
This
we're
is
trying to
very-
help you transition from one career to another. I think we've got to give it our best shot.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Demaray.
Put something in about if your employer contributes, you get a leg up into the program, something like that. That would make it public private. That would be kind of neat.
You mean if your current employer
Yeah.
wanted to do something?
Supported your
Support.
Current employer as any employer or as
Yeah,
education?
any employer. You're
Well,
washing
that's- And I
dishes.
think that's the point that you were trying to get to, Brian, about, you know, besides people who are paraeducators and the like, you know,
Yeah.
how do you get other people interested? And what do you have that can
Mhm.
accommodate them and get them to a degree
Great.
faster,
Get them to finish up.
get a license faster?
Great to see you, Jim.
Good to see you. Good
We're
afternoon.
gonna do a field trip after this session down to Brandon.
Oh, please do.
Is he in
Well,
Brandon?
He's in
help you.
Brandon. Your daughter's there,
My
right?
daughter's in Brandon. Oh.
I'll
Yeah.
help you post your property.
There you go. We can use some help.
No, I'm serious. We'll talk about it. It'd be fun. So we are looking at 517, correct? This is the
We are.
National Guard Tuition Benefit Program. You know, we've seen all this language separately. And we don't certainly need a line by line. We're not going to take a vote today, but if you would give us an overview of what it looks like now packaged as it is, and whatever you think we might need to know. And I do know that there's some highlighted language in there, some new language, and we can sort of take it from there. Hopefully maybe move this later this week.
Okay. So for the record, Jim Damer, as counsel, we are looking at draft 1.1 of your draft committee amendment to H 517. The language in section 1 on page 1 is the same as you've seen before. What this does, just to remind you, first section deals with the Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program. And the first change is in statute to allow multiple certificates to be obtained under the program. That is on line, that's on page 2 of line 19, same language as you saw before. So a member can receive multiple certificates under the program up to the cost of what would be a 4-year baccalaureate degree at NBU. So section 2 is a pilot program, which does two things. Same language as before, pretty much. It's the B on line 8 allows a National Guard member to get a second undergraduate baccalaureate degree under the program, but you can't get your first degree. You can only get your second degree under the program. And then line 14 in subsection C allows a member to pursue a graduate degree under the program, but only if the member agrees to work in Vermont full-time or be looking for work full-time during the member's service commitment with the Guard.
Anyone remember why we said second bachelor's degree and not your first? Do you remember that, Jim?
It already covers the first one, right? But this is saying if you got an undergraduate degree outside the program, then you can get a second degree under the program.
And if you got the first one, you can't get the second one
Right.
in the program.
So you can only get one.
Right, you get one, but people
One
apply,
bachelor.
and say already had a bachelor, so you can't. get
Right.
it.
They want to go teach.
Well, that's the other thing I was thinking. Is there anything related? I imagine people who have been in the military would be great teachers. Yeah. Please, go ahead.
Okay, I'm on page 4. Section 3 repeals the pilot program after 3 years. And then section 4 is taking S104 and putting it into this amendment. And this is where a child can be registered remotely. And the change here comes from testimony from Secretary French. It said before on line 15 that a school district shall allow remote registration of the student. And the remote's been removed, and the way in which that can be done has been specified by mail, telephone, or electronically. That's the only change from before. And then on section 5, on page 5, this language is the same as before. This is amending, I can't recall if this is UVM or VSC, but 5 deals with one and 6 deals with the other. But basically, for both institutions, allows the spouse independent child of a member to get in-state tuition. So 5 is for, let's say 5 is for UVM and 6 is for VSC or vice versa, but same language for both. So if I'm on page 6, line 8, same language again for the other institution. And then line 16, section 7, there's in S105, which is the Purple Star programs, school programs. Same language you saw before. So it defines military connected student. Next page on line 5 has the agency designate a school district as a Purple Star campus if it qualifies, and then explains the qualification criteria on line 8, same as before. And the only change here goes on for quite a while here, but same language. And then I'm on page, next page is page 8, line 19. Allows the school district to partner with third parties, same language as before. And what's been taken out is subsection E, which had the state board adopting rules. And Secretary French said there are no rules necessary here. So we took out that subsection. And then perfect timing, because you see Damien just walked into the room. We are on page 9.
We're on the election.
Section 8, and this is the eligibility for election to serve as Adjutant Inspector General. And if Damien's ready, I'll have him go through this.
Leonard, are you ready, or would you like a minute?
1 second here. Do you want me to jump in the witness chair?
Please.
Okay.
So we are now on page, is it 9?
9.
9,
All right. Let me get,
election of state and judicial officers.
and you're all following on your own devices or
Well, we have
paper
it all
copies?
right.
Great.
Paper.
Or electronic device.
Okay. So on line 9 of page 9, we're taking the adjutant and inspector general out of the election in the first year biennium. And then moving down, starting on line 18, we've struck out legislative trustees, and we're moving that down to line 21. So the phrasing matches up to subsection A. So they're an elected state officers whose election by the Constitution and laws devolves upon the General Assembly and Joint Assembly, including the legislative trustees of the Vermont State Colleges Corporation and the adjutant and inspector general. So it just tracks the language from subsection A. And then I've struck out legislative trustees in 2 instances and replaced it with the word officers. So just to reflect again that we're not just electing trustees in the second year of the biennium. And then in section 9, we've added a new subdivision under subsection A and 20 VSA 363, which relates to the adjutant general and then the assistant adjutant general and the senior non-commissioned officers in the National Guard. And we're adding requirements that says in order to be eligible for election to serve as adjutant and inspector general, an individual shall obtain the rank of colonel or above, be a current member of the U.S. Army, Air Force, Army Reserve, Air Force Reserve, Army National Guard, or Air National Guard, or be eligible to return to active service in the Army National Guard or Air National Guard, be a graduate of a senior service college, and be eligible for federal recognition. So, and that is it in those sections.
Committee, any questions at this point?
Can I just pick up on one thing?
Please, go ahead.
Which is, if you look on the last page, oh, give it that. Sorry, pop up here. Last page was changing the title of the bill. And my screen's on block, so I can't see what it says. But take a look at the new title and make sure that you're comfortable with that language.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
related to the bill, but existing statute, or are we
Sure.
short on time?
No, we're good. We're good.
The part about whose election the Constitution and laws devolves in the first instance, is that in reference to statewide officials that don't get a majority in that the legislature has to elect them, or is that, what is that referring to?
So this,
Line 7 and 8 on page 1.
yeah, that is quite old language,
Yeah.
and it refers to state officers who failed to get the majority, because that would occur earlier in the session. These are state offices that the General Assembly is responsible for electing without the governors. So it's not like the Senate where you consent to the governor's appointments. This is where the General Assembly elects. I'm not sure exactly why that phrasing was chosen way back when, but
So when they say state officers, they're really just referring to the sergeant at arms and the trustees.
yeah,
And
That's-
or it wasn't the other, because
yeah, it's
the other elected officers are considered state officers, right?
yes, they are also state officers, but their election does not devolve to the General Assembly in the first instance. So it means that with the other state officers where there's no majority and it goes to the General Assembly to settle it, the first instance is actually the public votes. Whereas here, the first instance is the General Assembly votes. And then the second instance, if they don't get a majority, is they take a person off and they vote again. And you keep doing that until you resolve the election. At least I think that's how the process works. I would defer to the clerk and the secretary on that, to be sure. But that's my understanding of the process there is that, for example, with the adjutant general, if you didn't get it on the first ballot, you drop the last place off and then revote and keep going to get the proper count. But yeah, that's what it means in the first instance, is that these are people who are specifically elected by the General Assembly versus, the other state offices where the General Assembly just serves as a tiebreaker.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, concerns? I'm gonna let it sit on the calendar for a couple of days. I just keep hearing little bits here and there. If somebody might have a concern, we'll probably vote on it on Friday. If anybody hears from anyone else, I'll just confirm with our friends in government ops that they're okay with the language that we landed on, which the chair has been helping us with. So I'm sure we'll be fine around the qualifications. Jim, thanks a million.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Amy, anything else?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
Daphne, you want to put that on a vote for Friday? Thanks. Okay. Our last item of the day. Mr. Walk, thanks for joining us. Want to join us at the table? And suspect Mr. Chapman and there we go. Welcome back, Senate Education. Again, our condolences on the passing of your dad. Probably not for many of us here, but share that again. So PCB testing in schools, and Mr. Chapman and Ms. Capolino, thanks for joining us again. This is something that we're anticipating, again, as we've said multiple times, our colleagues in the House would like to push this date out a little bit. This committee is still not there. We appreciate all that you have done to help talk to us about that. And we're going to hear from additional people about that this week and next. But what we're now trying to get our head around is some costs. And I know you've talked about it a little bit, but we are working with our colleagues in appropriations on this, these extra revenue dollars, if you will, and seeing if we could get to a point where we could say to them, we should really set this amount aside. Given the magnitude of the problem, the potential of the problem, this is what we should be setting aside this year. We've talked a little bit about that already, but just if you would review that with us, share what numbers again you're thinking about, and anything else at this point. I think we have the information for the most part, I think, from all of you around whether or not to push it out, whether or not to keep it, but there might be some other questions on that as well. So with that.
Sure, I'll start and probably hand it off to Matt Fish. And so for the record, Peter Walk, Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation. I am mostly, and part of the reason why you're seeing Matt for the first time in this discussion is the other piece of news that I got last week was that I'm starting a new job. And so effective next Friday, I will no longer be the DEC commissioner. And so.
But your cell phone isn't changing, is that correct? For those of us that need to reach you.
The cell phone that you typically reach me on will no longer be in service. So again.
You're lucky.
Whether that's official or not. No, I'm obviously care about these issues deeply and will still be reaching out. So Matt is going to take over sort of leadership with Trish of this work in the General Assembly, as it's obviously sort of inopportune timing for my departure from a sort of wrapping up the session standpoint. You are in great hands. Obviously, Trish is the expert, and Matt is good help. And so it's also fairly smart too. I mean, you know, I can't see him unless I turn around, but
Probably best, you're not.
so that's sort of where that starts. So I think we last year, you know, sort of when we were talking about this at the end of the session last year, had done some very preliminary work estimating potential cost. It is, and you know, Trish can go through it. It's about as waggy as you get.
Okay.
In the wild ass guess category of things. Pardon my French. Because we have 5 data points, right? We have Burlington, and we have the 4 schools that we tested in 2013. We have some more information about other schools, but you know, Burlington, and from what we've heard is you know, from colleagues around the states and other states and EPA, is an outlier, right? So if everything were based on the Burlington cost estimate, it would be, you know, we would need to set aside a lot of money. But maybe I'll stop talking and let Trish talk and see. I don't know if we can give you a precise number.
And to be honest, and I really appreciate the 3 of you coming back in, because this has been a conversation. We're just trying to figure some things out. I recognize that you may be repeating some things to us, but it's helpful as we try to grapple with how to really handle this with likely going to be a potential of a big problem. Ms. Capolino.
Hello, everybody. So when this request first came in last year, I did reach out to several consultants that do work with PCBs in buildings, both in Vermont and in Massachusetts. And I asked them if they could give me a range of costs that they've seen related to assessment and cleanup. And so Peter's right, or Commissioner Walk is right. This is really a big guess and a huge range, because we don't know how many schools may need this assistance that, you know, might have PCBs in them, and so would need to continue to do work. And we don't know what the scope or the magnitude of any of the issues would be. So what I did put together, and this, like I said, is a huge range. We're looking at testing of PCBs in buildings. So after we do indoor air sampling, and if there are detections above the school action level, then we would require the school to hire a consultant to determine what the source of the PCBs in indoor air is. So that's the assessment part. And under our rules, we require that they determine the degree and extent of contamination. So how much is here and where is it, and what's the scale of the concentration? So what I put together was, it could be between $10,000 and $300,000 per school. So it's a huge range, and it's really based on the complexity of the school and how many potential PCB products may exist there. The positive, if we want to put a positive spin on it, is that between the Department of Health and DEC, we were able to put some funding together to partner with the University of Iowa, and they can go in and do some specific testing that kind of fingerprints the sources of PCBs in a space to help us identify the specific product that may be causing the elevated concentrations instead of having to sample every single potential PCB product that could be in a room. So we're really excited to have them partnering with us on this project. So after we determine what the source and the cause of the PCBs are in a building, the next phase is cleanup. And that still would be a requirement of the school to hire a consultant and then conduct the cleanup. And it could be removal, it could be mitigation. And so from the consultants that I spoke with, they gave me ranges of a low cost of $50,000 to medium cost was around $200,000. And then the high cost was $1 million to $18 million. And that could be even higher. So that is the huge range that I can share with you and how we got to that range of costs. And when I looked at it, I think I was basically saying close to 5 million or so for the sampling assessment piece. And I think I had said 36 million for cleanup. And that cost, to be clear, does not cover the cost for any replacement that might need to happen. And what I mean by that is if it's the caulking in the window, it doesn't cover the cost to put another window back in if you can't use the window that was there. Or if it was the tile, the glue or the adhesive on the back of the tile, it doesn't cover the cost to put the tiles back in. So it truly is just the remediation cost to remove the PCBs that are causing the impacts to indoor air.
Senator Kershaw.
This question is about the process when the school, they have the PCBs and then get the consultant to figure out what the products, and then they get a consultant to do the plan. I'm assuming they go back to DC and DC approves that.
Correct. So each time they have to submit a work plan to DEC for review and approval to make sure it's complying with our rule that talks about how to clean up contaminated sites, and to make sure that what they're doing will get them to the ultimate endpoint of a clean remediated space.
So we say to our Senate colleagues that setting aside $36 million for cleanup is a number that makes sense to you. That again, recognizing there's, it could come in a lot higher, but.
So I would say 41 million.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Did you say 41 million, Trish?
I did, yeah, to include the assessment piece. So there's finding the contamination and then cleaning up the contamination. Is 41 million is my big guess.
So that's her big guess for the whole book of work, right? And so that's part of the discussion around how does this schedule and testing roll out, right? Because if we're now above, how many schools are we at now, Trish, that have been?
We're at 340 right now.
They have it identified.
That have identified that need to be tested, that meet the built or renovated prior to 1980 definition. So if we're talking about a 2-year testing timeframe, that is, we're gonna, these are big testing chunks, right? So we're gonna take groups of schools at a time, work them through the process, support them, all of those things.
Yeah.
Right, so you're not gonna have all of them test now, and so we're not gonna have a need for $41 million today.
Sure.
But it's important for the schools to understand that the state is ready and not just kind of going to leave them in the lurch until the next time you all are back in session to have that discussion. So I appreciate being here for that.
What we're trying to do, and a little bit about the ed surplus. I'm sure we've got different competing priorities. Some people would like, competing priorities, but I think it's safe to say that we all feel as though it's essential, and I believe the chair approves also, that we not put this off, while we have these dollars, and set something aside to be used. And I would think, I'm guessing you're speaking to the administration, would agree with that.
I am not, and this, I haven't had any conversations about the specific sources of funding about this with
Okay.
anybody, so I can't, I'm not gonna speak on in that way. So
Okay.
understanding that it is a priority to identify for the schools what, if any, the state is
Yeah.
prepared to do is a different conversation than where it comes from, to my knowledge.
Is there some money that was already set aside for the testing, 5 million or something?
Last year, we did something.
Okay, so
So
like,
that is simply for the initial testing, not for
right.
for the additional 5 that Trish mentioned in terms of trying to understand the extent of the contamination.
So like after you identify it, you know, like where's it coming
This
from?
is the sort of screening level indoor air tests.
So we still think that 5 million will do the testing of the 340 schools, or there's more schools than you thought when we picked the 5 million? That was also.
That was a guess. That was an
Yeah.
estimate too. So there's a strong chance that we're back to you to have lots of conversations about additional resources if that's insufficient. You know, the other option that exists is that we simply aren't funding that testing anymore, right? The testing obligation doesn't fall on the DEC to support schools. It falls on schools, and we as the DEC are providing resources to help them. So the obligation exists whether you add more money to that pot or not.
How much has been spent with the 5 million on testing?
So we have not begun yet because we've been
Oh, I
doing,
thought there was some. I'm sorry, I was under the impression that 3 or 4 schools had.
They did that before.
that was in
Oh, no,
2013.
Yeah, okay.
So we've been working through all that we talked about the last time, and all the protocols and how to
Yeah.
do that, how to prioritize, how to set that schedule.
Right.
And part of that schedule matters, right, is whether we have 2 years or 4 years to do that work.
Could I just ask for a quick definition from Ms. Capolino? What was the language you used around the 5 million
Assessment.
assessment? Okay, thank you. Senator Pursley.
The other thing I would be concerned about, if we set aside a pool of money and there's a 2 to more years rollout, and the schools know that there's some state money, but there's only a certain pool of state money. If you're in year 3, the pool could be dry, but those in year 1 could use it. Like, I don't know if there's other examples in state government where we've done, how we make it fair, or do we just say, well, we're gonna have to find the money later for those that are in the back of the line? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a.
Start with all the schools built in 1782.
Well,
There's
so
one right there.
as a reminder, we're starting with those schools that are in the sort of sweet spot,
Yeah.
1960 to 1980.
It is elementary, like prioritized.
And then lower age and those with a higher percentage of federal poverty level, those, so we're trying to make sure that we can prioritize effectively. But that means we're also likely to get, you know, those that are most likely to test with PCBs first. So it also makes it harder to figure out what that tail is gonna look like, because it's gonna potentially overweight those initial, the schools.
It might seem scary the first year, but
It could, it's impossible to know.
Ms. Capolino, do you have a timeline, if we were to stick to this 2-year period? How many, given of course that I think our priority is the elementary schools, what we would get to in a 2-year period, or even in the next year, given again some of the characteristics that we've sort of put forward, you know, school building in a certain age, recognizing that we want to address this in elementary schools first, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll say this has been keeping me up at night a lot, trying to figure this out. And I only say that because when I can put schools on a calendar and say, here's when you're going to sample them or be sampled. I think the real issue comes down to our staffing capacity to be able to provide the hands-on communication and assistance that schools are hoping for. They've been asking us to make sure that we'll participate in their public meetings and their school board meetings and help them explain what the information says. And that's something that we've always done. So being able to sample a lot of schools where there's going to be overlapping work happening by a small program and a small consulting community is going to, I think, overwhelm us, and we don't want to do a bad job at something that is really important. So that's what's stressing me out a little. But I did put it out for a year, and in order for us to get to 2024 of July, it works out to, I had it right in front of me. Give me 1 second. I just want to turn my camera off so I can pull it up for myself. Okay, I'm back. So for the first year, and I started off with a small number, so I only wanted to do 17 schools so we could work out any wrinkles that might come about so we can fix them moving forward. But the first year going out to March of 2023 puts us at 124 schools. And then we would have to finish up the remaining schools the next year. It turns into trying to make a lot of work happen in a small amount of time, and potentially having us inundated with a lot of technical information that we need to really evaluate and make sure that we can explain well and help the schools explain well.
It's so what couple things Trish has been saying. One is you need people who are expert in that field to be able to do that work and explain that comfortably to the parents, right? So it's not something that we can quickly plus up staffing to do. It doesn't work. The other piece is we could devote, Trish's team works on a lot of site cleanups, right? They're the team that worked on Bennington, right? And so, but we would essentially have to divert all of their attention to this to manage to that timeline to provide the support that schools and school communities are going to want. And while I do think there is significant value in providing that support, I don't know how we balance the timelines that people are expecting for general site cleanups to happen and for issues to be addressed and super fun closeouts to happen and all of those things that are normal parts of our work to balance with this. It's challenging.
So there's an interest in putting this off. And so what does putting this off do for all of the concerns that?
So it allows us to have more, essentially what Trish said, 124 in the first year. We would be able to elongate that. So we do fewer in the first year because we have more time to sort of get to the other ones. That means more individualized attention for all of those school districts and supervisory units as we work through their schools. That's really what it comes down to, is that support that we can provide.
Okay, and there's no thought about any kind of a preliminary package set of information that school boards can look at. I mean, I'm trying to sort out some of the efficiencies that might.
I do understand that there is a desire to have as much information out there as quickly as possible, and we're supportive of that to a point. And it's not the point where the information isn't out there that we're supportive of. It's a question of whether people feel the ability to talk about what that means and how they address it. And without our participation, without health participation, any community group feels quickly overwhelmed trying to manage very technical information, not knowing precisely what the solutions are going to be in a way that ends up doing sometimes more harm than good.
I don't know if it makes as much, in this committee, even today, we've talked about the culture change with these kinds of meetings, with Zoom and all those sorts of things. And I don't know, I get it. If you're in a school and you just realize your third grader has been exposed to PCBs, jumping on a Zoom isn't going to nearly be as comforting as having somebody come down. I get it. It's just something.
Yes, it's not the time spent driving around the state, it's doing the work to be prepared for it and to talk about it and to meet with those individual groups, to meet with school boards. Yeah, Zoom is definitely not the most effective way to do that. And we'll do it if we have to.
Senator Hooker.
So I beg your pardon, I've forgotten, what is the staff like? How many people are committed to this project?
Well, so you gave us one person to manage the process. We've been working to hire. We have not yet been able to hire that position.
And that's been out there how long? Trying to get somebody.
I don't know precisely the answer to that question.
I think we were able to start recruiting in October or November.
But have you been advertising for that position?
This is our 4th round of interviews that just happened. We just haven't been able to find someone who's capable. I think we did this time. So fingers crossed that I'll have someone else with me here next time.
So this one person would be added to how many that
Staff
are
one.
already here? Just.
Well, so in terms of managing the overall effort, what we would do is bring in those people who are managing other site cleanups to help engage schools, right? So to assign school districts to individual staff members to develop those relationships and to be there for a community as they work through this issue.
Senator Lyons.
No, I'm good.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Mr. Chapman, do you want to add anything at this point to the conversation?
I mean, I think the only thing I would say, Senator, or add is the importance of that individual sort of communication that we have with communities when they find a problem, especially on sensitive issues. And I know you have an experience with it in Bennington and the work that the agency did when we came down and sort of talked through the community. And I can't underscore too much how important that is when people are really concerned and don't have a lot of information, for us to be available to hear their questions and try and help them through things. And I think Trish and I share the concern that we're not asking for a delay, we're asking for an extension, right? We're asking for more time for us to give communities the type of individualized attention we think is incredibly important to do this effectively.
I hear that.
So one moment, please.
I was just going to say, I hear that. The one thing that just gives me pause is the mother of that 1st grade student that finds in year 4 that there was PCBs. And so they would probably rather that those other schools didn't get as much handholding as they needed, so that they could find out in year 2 instead of year 4 that their elementary school has PCBs in it. So that's the balancing of.
And that's what we've been grappling with all along. Mr. Chapman.
I mean, I completely appreciate that stance, Senator. I mean, and I think we're all struggling with it. I mean, it's the challenge of trying to. I mean, I'm hopeful that we get into this project and realize that we don't have nearly as significant a problem as we theoretically could have, and that the level of individualized attention won't be necessary, and we can expedite through some of the process. I mean, I think the concern is with a hard end date of 24, that if we do run into challenges, that we won't be able to sort of give the attention and do the work that is going to be critical. And I think it's just really important. I think that especially in targeting some communities that are communities that are what we would classify as economic justice related communities, environmental justice related communities, I think we have an obligation to frankly spend even more time and take the effort to make sure that communities have the tools and information to address these challenges.
Do we know of the 340 some schools, how many of those are elementary schools or preschools?
Ms. Capolino?
Maybe. I think I can say that too. Hold on.
I know you gave it to us at one point when you came in with the list of 300, but I don't think it was broken up that way.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, every school listed.
Doesn't have to be the exact number. I just wondered if it was like half of them or 3/4
Oh, right, there it is.
There it is.
number.
Oh. These are all elementaries.
The way,
Okay,
the way
I don't
we
need-
broke it up was if there was a child care present. And what I'm seeing is that, I'm still going, there are 313 that have a child care in them.
Here, how many?
See, you say 115?
313,
313 of the 340.
correct.
All
Have a
right.
child care in
We're
them.
all set. Thank you.
Have childcare.
Childcare, so some children,
Okay.
elementary school age
Or
kids are in the building. So you're not like, I was thinking, well, gee, if we could get those done in the first 2 years, that would help. But
Good
it
try.
seems like that's all 4 years.
They are prioritized in the way we prioritize the schools, but almost all of them have a child care.
Other questions? Ms.
I would-
Capolino, would you please resend I believe you sent us something that mentioned the 36 million and the 5 million, some kind of document that we might share with our colleagues in approach. And if you haven't, I mean, it can just be, an email so they can reference that.
I can.
Anything else?
And just
Please, Senator Hurd.
just to clarify, the 5 million from last year is for the initial testing,
Not for the assessment.
not for the assessment.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. All right. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And Ms. Capolino, we'll look forward to your email.
Sounds good.
Great, thanks.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you going to EBT or BIC? I can't remember. EBT.
What are you going to do? Good luck.
Vision Vermont.